All right, well, let's go through an example of confidence intervals. So this is a conclusion of what a confidence interval is, an explanation of that. And so let's talk about a Pew Research Center and Smithsonian Magazine recently quizzed a random sample of this 1,006 US adults on the knowledge of science. All right, one of the questions asked, which gas makes up most of the Earth's atmosphere? Hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, or oxygen? A 90% confidence interval for the portion of who correctly answered nitrogen is this, okay? And so we are looking for the true proportion, all right? So we are looking for a true proportion, okay, of who, so the true proportion of who answered nitrogen, all right? All right, when asked a question about this, okay, proportion when answered nitrogen. Okay, so interpret the confidence interval. Well, we are, according to this, it says that we are 95% confident that the true proportion, all right, the true proportion of U.S. adults, okay, because we're talking about the true proportion of U.S. adults. So the true proportion, so this is at the parameter. So this is the population. So this is talking about population here. Um, parameter. Okay, so we're talking about population here. So the true proportion of U.S. adults, all right, who would, oops, can't spell, who would do what? Who would answer correctly when asked, all right, which gas makes up most of the Earth's atmosphere? Okay, so that's what we know. So we are 90% confident that the true proportion of U.S. adults who would answer correctly when asked which gas makes up most of the Earth's atmosphere is between, all right, what value? So it's going to be between 0.175, so about 17.5%, to, all right, 22 or 0.225, so about 22.5%. All right, that's what we know. So we're guessing with 95% confidence that the true proportion is going to be between these two numbers. Now we're not guaranteed that the true proportion is between these two proportions, but we are 95% confident that it would be. Okay, and so we could pick any value between there. All right, and we were guessing that 95% time. All right, or we are 95% confident that yes, the true proportion is going to be between these two values. All right, and so we could guess some sort of number. All right, and then that's what we know. All right, so it's between these two values. All right, so we're giving a range of values of where this is going to be. All right, we don't know what it is. All right, but we are guessing this is 9% confidence between here. So now let's calculate what our point estimate is. Now our point estimate, once again, remember that's our stat. Okay, that's our stat. So we're looking for a p hat here. All right, that's our stat right here. And in order to figure out our stat is we know that the parameter is in the middle. Okay, that's our stat, and it's right in the middle of the confidence interval. Middle of confidence interval. Okay, that's what we know. So in order to figure out this stat, all right, this point estimate, so that's going right at PE, all right, we would take our values, we just take 0.175, our first one, and add it to 0.225, and then divide that by 2, all right? And so if you take out your calculators, you can figure this out as well, all right? And also, when we're going through this, I probably should always mention this, please try these problems on your own first, all right, before I go through the answers. That always is kind of good practice whenever you're doing anything, because you want to know, am I doing it right? Okay, am I doing it wrong? All right, so right here, what we have right there, it's going to be I got 0.2, All right, so we found 20%. All right, 20% of those individuals, all right, out of 1,006 agree that. All right, and then the margin of error. Now the margin of error we know, okay, is the average difference from here. Okay, so this is the average difference. All right, average difference. All right, from the point estimate or our stat. Okay, and because we always know it's going to be, all right, when we're finding confidence interval is point estimate, all right, plus and minus the margin of error. And that's how we get our confidence interval. Okay, just so we are kind of always reviewing this when you're doing that. So in order to figure this out, we're going to take our b values, so we take our larger value, subtract that from our lesser value, and then we divide by 2, and that will give us our margin of error. Okay, or it'll give us our margin of error. So once again, you can put this into your calculator, all right, and we're going to have 0.105, and we'll divide by the 2, and we're going to have 0.025, 0.025. So 0.025, so about 2.5% from 20% on both sides. Okay, that makes sense. All right, and then we could probably do this. Another fast, efficient way is, since it has to be between there, we could actually just take our point estimate and subtract it from one of those values right there, all right, from the top value, and we also get that. So a other little trick is, since we know it has to be the difference, we could actually just take our point estimate, if we found it correctly, and we just take that 0.2, and we could also just subtract that from, all right, from 0.225, and we realize that's going to be 0.025 as well, because that's another way of thinking about it as well. All right, so because it's the difference, the average difference from the point estimate. All right, so that's another way of thinking about it. So many different ways of solving a problem, but that is just another way of figuring it out. All right, so finally, if people guess one of the 4 random choices, about 20% of the time should get the answer correct. Correct? Yeah, so if they just randomly guessed. Does this interval provide convincing evidence that less than 25% of the US adults would answer this question correctly? Explain your reason. All right, so do we have evidence? All right, do we have evidence that 25%, all right, the less than 25% of US adults would answer this correctly? All right, well, to figure this out, well, do we have convincing evidence of this? Well, is our value right here, okay, if you guess one of the 4 choices at random, about 25%, we get the answer correctly. Does it, by convincing that less than 25% of the US adults would answer this question correctly? Explain your reason. Well, are we guaranteed this? Well, we have a value that is less than this, okay, less than this. So because we have our confidence interval right here, and we're looking for that 25% would be less than that, well, since our confidence interval, if we look at this, is actually really, if we can read it out, is 22.5 is our top end, and we're going from, so that's percent, and then we're going from 17.5%. And we see that our confidence interval is less than, all right, so we are 95% confident that the interval would be less than 25%. So does this provide convincing evidence that less than 25%? Well, yeah, all right, because right now we have a 95% confidence interval that if we were to just take any of these values, all right, that the proportion is actually less than 25%. So yes, so you'd say yes, all right. We do have convincing evidence that the true proportion of, all right, of U.S. adults of U.S. of U.S. adults would answer correctly less than 25% of the time. All right, because if you want to say this, because our confidence, our 95% confidence interval, what does it do? Interval um, has is um, contains values that are all less than, all right, 25%. Okay, 25%. All right, and that's what we know. All right, because that's what we see. All right, and that's the reason. So I'm sorry if you can't read this, but we do have that says convincing. All right, convincing. All right, convincing evidence that the true proportion of U.S. adults would answer correctly less than 25% of the time. Oh my goodness, this is horrible writing. I apologize. Because our 95% confidence interval, all right, um, contains, oops, all right, contains, there we go, values that are all less than 25%. Okay, so that would be our explanation. All right, so I hope this little trick understanding helps you understand more about how we can apply confidence intervals. In this case, of how to find true proportions and what a confidence interval means, how to find a point estimate and margin of error, and how can that confidence interval help us make some know more about and inferences about the true population um, when we are given it. All right, well, good luck and God bless in the rest of your problems.